Today we're going to look at the Roman Republic, which began with the fall of the kings of Rome in 509 BC and ended with the rise of the first Roman emperor and the Roman Empire almost 500 years later in 27 BC. The start of the Roman Republic began when the people rose up against the last king of Rome. The king was accused of crime and cruelty and using his powers only for selfish goals instead of for the people and the glory of Rome. He was expelled from the city, and a new form of government was established, a republic, a form of government where citizens have the power. It's important to remember that this was not a democracy. So when I say the citizens have the power, I don't mean all of the citizens. During the years of the Republic, Rome expanded well beyond the large city the kings had controlled to conquer all of Italy and Greece. It would grow even larger under the emperors. Within the Republic, not everyone was equal. There were three major classes of people: the patricians at the top, the plebeians in the middle, and the slaves at the bottom. We're going to focus on the patricians and the plebeians, as the slaves did not have any political power. Within these top two classes were several more class distinctions, but you don't need to know those for this class. What you do need to know is the differences between these two major groups. The patricians were at the top of the social ladder. They inherited their wealth, they were the wealthiest in Rome, and they were the only ones who could serve in government. All these advantages of power and wealth were inherited, just like in a monarchy. The plebeians were the commoners of ancient Rome. They were the farmers, merchants, artisans, soldiers, traders, bakers, all of the regular citizens of Rome, and the majority of the people who contributed to the Roman economy. Plebeians included the poor and unemployed, as well as business owners, many of whom were well educated and quite wealthy. You were stuck, however, in whatever social order you were born into, and the plebeians were not even allowed to marry someone in the patrician class, as they did not want the lower classes to advance themselves in any way. As you might imagine, Rome's republic and most of its turbulent times were shaped by the struggle between the wealthy upper class and the regular citizens. In the early years of the struggle, about 58 years after the republic was established, the plebeians rose up against the patricians and demanded more rights. This led to the creation of the 12 Tables, a set of laws that applied equally to all Roman citizens. Some of the laws were harsh, but it also established the rights of the people. From then on, the republic was based on the rule of law, not the whims of the powerful elite. To further balance the use of power in the republic, the new system used a mix of several types of government that separated powers among those different types of government. I'm quickly going to explain how those different types of government work together in the next slides. The republic was generally a combination of democracy, ruled by the people, oligarchy, ruled by an elite few, and monarchy, ruled by one. In Rome's case, there were actually two monarchs simultaneously. In times of emergency, the people would turn over their rights and power to a dictator for a limited time, and that person would rule alone with absolute power. Generally, however, this is what the government of Rome, the Roman Republic, looked like. On the far left, you have the monarchy form of government, with two consuls holding the top positions of power. They directed the government and army and acted as judges and could issue official orders and proclamations called edicts. Their power was limited in that they only held office for 1 year. Once their term was over, a new set of consuls was elected, and the old ones were sent out of Rome at the head of an army. This helped Rome expand and keep former consuls from being able to try and gain more power. Below the consuls were the senators. This group held power like an oligarchy. It was a group, and it varied in size from about 300 to 700 members. They controlled all of Rome's budget, which is a significant power. They could also pass laws, and the members of the Senate were the richest men in Rome. On top of that, they held their office for life. Their only limit was that they could not control the army. The democratic end of the Roman Republic was the assemblies. These assemblies were made from the plebeian class. All plebeians could join, and all had an equal vote. They approved or rejected laws. They voted when and where to go to war. They had the final say in the courts, and they had veto power. On top of that, most of the soldiers came from this class. While this meant that they probably had sympathy to this group, it doesn't change the fact that the military was controlled by the consuls. The powers of the assemblies were limited by several important things. They had no say in what laws could be passed. They had no say in who could be selected for elections. And voting was held only in Rome and irregularly scheduled. Since it was impractical for most people to leave their jobs and travel to the city to participate in assemblies, as little as 2% of the Roman citizens usually voted. That means Rome was actually very far from a democracy. On top of that, because it was such a small group of people who regularly voted, and because they were all based in Rome, the powerful and the rich in the Senate could actually use their influence to buy votes in the assemblies. In review, the citizens in the Roman Republic were far from equal, with patricians holding most of the wealth and most of the power in the positions of consul and senate. However, they were far more democratic than the vast majority of civilizations in that they allowed every free male citizen in the right to vote in the assemblies. Furthermore, all men were equal before the law, as all levels of power were subject to the laws of the 12 tables.